Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World Library, presented by today's foremost professional sportsmen, who will share proven methods and techniques that will help you become a better and more successful fisherman.
Hi, I'm Chet Douthit. In this edition of Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World Library, I'm going to show you how to become a better topwater fisherman. I'm going to show you the proper baits to throw, what line sizes to use on these baits, and the right rods and reels to throw with the line and bait to make you a better topwater fisherman. What is a topwater bait? There are several different kinds of topwater baits that I really like to throw. Some of them are propeller baits. You've got your pop baits that you pop on top of the water. You've got your walking baits like a Zara-spook or a woodwalker. You've got a plunker bait like a Pop-R or a Lucky 13. You've got a buzz bait that runs along topwater. Topwater bait is anything that works on top of the water, lays on the water, or makes noise just under the water is what I call topwater baits. Let's go over some of these baits and how you use them and how the fish react to some of them. Some of my favorite baits, this is a devil's horse. It's got a prop on each end. You throw it out there and you just twitch it along. A lot of times when these fish are spawning, they don't want a bait that moves real fast. And a devil's horse you can leave over the bed. The longer you can leave a bait over the bed, the better it'll work. And you just give it little twitches and these blades pop and splash the water, and she can't stand it. She'll really bust a devil's horse real well. Some of your other prop baits is a crazy shad. It's a super good little lure. It's a little smaller bait. Sometimes they want a smaller topwater bait. It's still got your props on each end, and really chug it. It's real good for schooling fish when fish get their schooling. One of my favorite baits is a Zara-spook, or Charlie Campbell's got a woodwalker out there. You work them just the same. These are a zigzag type. They call them walking the bait, and you catch we've caught a lot of big fish on a Zara-spook. It's one of the top big fish baits that you can get. Another type of topwater bait that I like to throw is a Rapala or a long A-bomb, or just twitching it. Sometimes they don't want the props that make a lot of noise. They want something quiet that just sits over it and you just barely twitch it. And these baits work real well when they don't want noise. You just got to experiment with them to see which bait they would like to have the best. Another topwater bait that's really come on strong in the last few years is your popping baits like the Pop-R here. It's a plopper bait. You just bloop, bloop. Your Lucky 13 is one of the first topwater baits they ever come out with, and it's also a plunker type bait and works super well in summer and fall when the fish are schooling real well. Of course, the old tiny torpedo is always a real good little bait for something small when they're chasing little minnows. I like to throw baits that, according to the size of the shad that's out there on the water right now. And right now we've got a lot of little minnows, and we'll be throwing a lot of small baits also because the fish are feeding on the little fry. So a tiny torpedo is a real small bait that works real well. This is a Cordell red fin that it's like the Rapalas and stuff. It's a minnow type bait that doesn't make a lot of noise and also works super on spawning fish. A couple of other baits that I really like to throw, I consider a topwater bait, and one of the best big fish baits in the country is a buzz bait. You can throw it a long ways and cover a lot of ground with it, and it's always caught a lot of big fish as a buzz bait. Also, another bait that I consider a topwater bait, and not a lot of people doesn't, is a Johnson spoon. Down here on Okeechobee in the grass, where you got a lot of grass, it's hard to work some baits in places. A Johnson spoon pulling across this milfoil and pepper grass works super. Catch a lot of big fish on Johnson spoon. Also, the rat and the scum frog work well on a lot of places where you got a lot of topwater matted stuff and you're able to fish a bait across it. These are some of the baits that we're going to talk about today. Let's talk about rod and reel selection and line selection to use. On my twitch baits, such as my Rapalas and your tiny torpedoes and stuff like that, where the baits are real light, I usually use a spinning rod because it is so much easier to throw. I use 8 and 10 pound test line most of the time. Because these baits are small and light, it's the best thing to throw them on because you can throw them a lot further than you can on a bait casting rod. So on those type baits, your real light topwater baits, I usually throw it on a spinning rod with 8 to 10 pound test line. On heavier baits, such as the Zara spooks, your pawpars and stuff, I use 14 pound test maximum if I can get away with it. Sometimes in heavy timber or heavy cover, you have to go to heavier line, but most of the time I like to throw it on 12 to 14 pound test. I like a real light tipped action rod. A light action rod, either fiberglass or graphite. I like to throw it on fiberglass because I get a slower reaction to your rod and it's easier to work the bait. So most of the time I throw it on 12 to 14 pound test and a real light tipped action rod. On my buzz baits and my Johnson spoons, I go ahead and throw my longer rod. On the other rods, I like to use a 5.5 foot rod. It's easier to work the bait. But on your buzz baits and your Johnson spoons, I throw it on a 6.5, 7 foot rod, and I usually throw it on 20 pound test because it really doesn't matter on them. They're a fast moving bait and the fish don't react to the line size near as much on Johnson spoons and buzz baits. So I throw a lot bigger rod and heavier line on them. My devil's horses and my banglers, I still like to go back and throw it on a 5.5 foot rod, light action, where you can twitch it real easy and the bait works a lot better. Still throwing my 12 to 14 pound test line. So these are the baits that I'm going to show you today, how to use, the proper technique on how to work these baits, and hopefully catch a fish or two out here today. The first bait I'm going to show you how to work today is the Zara spook. But before I show you how to work it, I'm going to show you 2 or 3 little things that you need to have and do to really make this bait work properly. The first thing that I like is a real limber tipped rod. I like about a light to a medium action rod to work the bait with. You really need that over a stiff rod. I throw it on about 14 pound test. I very seldom throw it over 14 if I can get away with it, unless I'm throwing it in real heavy cover. But one of the big things that you need is a good snap. A snap gives this bait has to have freedom to work, and a snap gives it about 100% more freedom than most people than it does if you tied directly to it. Most people tie directly to this bait and they can't get the bait to work. So a good round-headed snap where the bait can really work is a must. So I'm going to show you and demonstrate now how I work this favorite bait of mine.
Go.
The way I work this bait is after I throw it out there, you've got to work this bait with loose line. And if you can watch this line on the water, there's no tension on it, just except when I jerk it. And what it's doing is when that line gets tight, it jerks that bait around. Then it gives it freedom with the loose line to go all the way around. Then when you jerk it, it jerks it back. And that's the way you work it. It's just little quick jerks. And I use about 4 jerks before I even turn the reel a whole turn. The longer you can keep that bait in one area, the better it works. To work this there spook, I say you need a slack line on the water. And that's where your limber tip, and if you're working the bait and it keeps coming at you straight, you're probably cranking the bait way too fast. I like to give it about 4 jerks on my rod tip. Keeping the rod tip low is the easiest way to get that bait to work. Keeping the rod tip low and little short quick jerks, and what that's doing, that's letting that bait just walk back and forth like that. A good, accurate cast is a must. You've got to be able to throw that bait so when it comes by that attack zone, slowly and properly, the fish will get it. If you throw a bait 4 or 5 foot from a stump or a log, that fish a lot of the times will not come that far to get it. So if you can bring it to where you can walk that Zara spook, say this is the stump, and actually walk that spook around hitting that stump, usually when you start to move it away, that's when that fish will come and get it. So a very accurate cast is probably the biggest thing in catching fish on topwater. That's any kind of bait, is presentation. You got to be able to put the bait where the fish is going to be. He'll come and get it. Because a fish is one of his worst enemies is a bluegill. And an orange-bellied or a chartreuse-bellied spook really works good when they're on the beds, because it imitates a bluegill hanging right over the top of that bed, and he'll either hit it to kill it or run it away. And I change my rhythm with it occasionally. I give it 2 or 3 fast jerks and then slow it, stop it, and let it sit there for a second. A lot of times when just sitting there is when they'll hit it. And then once you get used to working a bait like that, we call it walking the dog, there's 2 or 3 different kinds of Zara spook type baits. There's a Zara spook, there's a walking Jim. Charlie Campbell's got a new one out called a wood walker that works real good. And always throw past your target. You think where that fish is going to be laying. Oh, there he is. There he is. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Oh, I just got him hooked by the back hook too, I think. Boy, you just don't want to fight these fish. I got him kind of out away from them reeds out in this open water. These big fish, you just don't want to overhorse them. Oh, come around here. Yeah. Oh, just got him by the back hooks. Come here. Oh. All right. Yeah. Say, that Zara spook, it's one of my favorite baits, and say I've known it for years to catch big fish. And down here in March and April on Okeechobee, you catch a lot of big fish on Zara spook. Oh, that's a good 6-7 pound fish right there. So, say, proper bait in a proper place, work the proper way, hopefully you get an end result like this. So, I'm gonna let you go, big booger. All right. Oh, that's fun when they hit that topwater bait. As you can see, we've kind of moved into a little different kind of grass in here. This is Kissimmee grass that most of it's in here with some bulrushes in here. It's awful hard and difficult to fish a topwater bait like a Zara spook or devil's horse in where you got a lot more grass vegetation in here. So one of my favorite baits to throw in here is a buzz bait or a lunker lure. It really comes through the grass well. It catches a lot of big fish. It's probably one of the best big fish topwater baits that I know of. You can cover a lot of ground quick with it, but as I say, it's a super bait for fishing a lot more cover and vegetation. It comes through it a lot better. So I'm going to throw this out there. I like to throw it on about a 7-foot rod with about 20-pound test line, because you get a big fish on in this heavy grass, you've got to have something that you can hold him and keep him on with. So I'm going to throw it out here and see if we can pick up anything doing this. You see how this buzzbait comes through that grass a lot better. It'll bump right into that stuff and come off of it just like it would a shad or something running away from something. There's a couple of little tricks that you can do to a buzzbait that I think will help it work a lot better. Is when you get it out of the package, I like to take a buzzbait and put a little more cup into the blades. Just bend them a little bit. You don't have to bend them much. That slows that bait down. And the way I like to fish a buzzbait is to throw it out there and just keep it up on top. Most people throw it and really crank it hard. Sometimes they'll hit it that way, and that's the way they want it. But most of the time, I think the slower you can keep that buzzbait coming across the top of the water, it gurgles more with a little more cup in the blade, and you can run it slower because it's got more cup in it. And the fish hit it a lot better that way. There's buzzbaits that's got clackers on them that a lot of times the fish won't make it a lot more noise. And that clacker on a buzzbait will really give it more noise, and the fish will hit it better. You just got to experiment each day on which type of bait that they want to hit. Some days they want one way, and next day they want it a different way. On any topwater bait, you should never set the hook till you feel the fish pull the bait down. You see the fish explode on the bait, wait till that fish has got to come up, get that bait, get it in his mouth and go down before he can ever close his mouth. And a lot of people will actually take the bait away from a fish because they jerk way too fast on a bait when they hit topwater than they do if they let that fish hit it and take it down. When that fish hits, I usually drop my rod, then come back and set the hook on them, and you don't miss near as many fish. I really think rod positioning has got a lot to do with working a buzzbait. The higher you keep the rod, the slower you can work it. Plus, when the fish hits it, you can't set the hook when you got the rod up here, so I just let the fish pull me down till I feel him go down with it, and then come back on the rod. And I don't miss near as many fish doing that by keeping my rod tip at about 11, 12 o'clock. Make a good old long cast out there and keep that rod high, as they say. Oh, oh, there's a good one. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a big one. Oh, he's down in the grass. Oh! Hang in there, buzzbait. Yeah, come here. Oh, look at there. Oh. That buzzbait out in this grass, especially spawner time like it is right now, will catch a lot of big fish in here. It and a Johnson spoon is probably two of the best out in this solid joint grass and stuff. I catching big fish. It's something easy to pull through this, and the fish will really get on it. But that is a giant, giant fish right there. So I'm going to let her go back and put her back. Maybe somebody else can catch her on a topwater bait. Okay. All right. Now I showed you how effective the buzzbait is out in this water. I'm going to show you another bait that it works super out in this thick cover. Okay, the other bait that I'm going to talk about besides the buzzbait out in this real thick cover is the Johnson Silver Minnow. They've got them in about 4 different colors. They've got them in a silver, a gold, a black, and a chartreuse with orange. About my favorite is the gold. It just depends on watercolor and water conditions what color I use. On the back of it, I either use a twin tail, a single tail. You can put a spinnerbait skirt. Ooh, there's a big fish just busted right over there. That's what I usually put on the back of it, either white, chartreuse, or yellow. It's very weedless. It's got a weedless part to it that really comes through the grass easy. It's a super, super bait for fishing real thick cover. And a lot of big fish. One of the best big fish baits that I know of out in this real thick cover that you can throw it and work through it real well. So I'm going to show you how I fish this. I just throw it out there and you just Sometimes they want it right on top, sometimes they want it down just a little bit. But boy, a lot of times when they hit it, they explode on this bait. Because you can't fish normally any other kind of baits in this real thick grass, and it really comes through it real well. It'll just pop over that grass and just keep right on working. Again, I like to keep my rod about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. When the fish hits it, you give with him. You don't come back on him instantly. You got to let him take that bait and go down with it. That bait just wobbles and comes right through that grass. I'll throw it in the thickest stuff I can throw it in. And fishing the Johnson spoon and the buzzbait, you're throwing it in this real thick cover. I use 20-pound to 25-pound test line because you never know when that big one's going to get you. Plus, if you do catch even a good fish, you've got to have something that you can just hold that fish and bring him when you can. Your line is up out of the water with the spoon and with the buzzbait. You're fishing the spoon and the buzzbait right where the line hits the water, so line size doesn't make any difference. Fish are not going to spook from it. So I use 20, 25-pound test, a 7.5 foot rod that holds real good, a stiff rod. On my buzzbait, I like to keep it high. On the Johnson spoon, I like to keep it down a little bit. But still, when the fish hits it, I don't set the hook. I'll wait till he pulls me down before I hit him. Always trying to keep eye contact with your bait. Know what it's doing. A good set of glasses is another big asset that I think that helps you watch your bait and see what it's doing. Good set of Polaroid glasses. Oh! That fish hit me right at the boat. Oh, get out from there. Oh, you got to be ready at all times on that spoon because they just come out of that thick stuff and get it. Oh. Come here, baby. Oh. Oh, don't throw it. Don't throw it. Oh, right. Whew. That spoon is a real exciting bait to throw. You're just watching it come through and she just explodes on it a lot of times. So I'm going to let her go too. Okay. I want to talk to y'all now on when and what time of the year that topwater fishing really gets to going and what I use. In the spring, I think spawning time is when these fish really start to hit topwater. They're on the beds, they're protecting it. You throw the Rapala type baits is what I like to use the best. Twitching it over the beds, I say the longer you can keep the bait over the bed, the better it works. Because these fish are in there protecting it, that bait gets right over the top of them. They don't want it there, and they'll come up and knock it and get rid of it. So I like the minnow type baits best in the early spring, spawning time. After spawn, that's when I like to go to Missouri spooks. Back in the Midwest on Table Rock, Bull Shoals, those what I call highland lakes, the deeper lakes, those fish will pull out the timber if they've got it, suspend in that timber. The Zara spook works super up there that time of year. We catch a lot of big fish after spawn. When they suspend out in timber, you can catch a lot of big fish working that spook through the treetops and along the boat docks. In the summertime, about all your topwater baits will work early in the morning, late in the evening. Your buzz baits, your Zara spooks, your pawpawers, they all work super in early and late in the day. Or if you happen to get a real good cloudy day, they will hit a topwater bait all day long. Going into late summer and early fall, your shad, that's when your shad will start schooling up out on your lakes. You see your big wads of them that come out on the surface. That's when I start to go into my prop type baits like your devil's horses. Still your spook and your buzz bait and all that, they want more noisy baits later in the fall because these shad are up on top flipping along. It will pull these fish out of deeper water. So that's when I like to use my devil's horses, my crazy shads. It just depends on the size of the shad. Now earlier in the summer it'll be the smaller shad, so if you throw your crazy horse, your little prop baits will work the best. Then later on in the fall your shad will start getting bigger. That's when I go to my wood chopper, your great big topwater baits. It's got a lot of big blades that creates a lot of noise. That will set these fish off and pull them a long ways too in your real clear lakes or your shallow lakes in muddy water. Those fish can hear it and come to it a lot easier. So that's kind of the basic pattern I like to use and what I use through spawn into the late fall. Okay, I want to show you now how we fish the minnow type baits, the Rapala type baits. We need to get into a little more open water. There's some boat trails and stuff that's down through here that's got some opening places in it that we can fish this type of bait and work it well. So grab my spinning rod for that, and we're going to try to catch one on a Rapala. Okay, we're going to go down these boat trails, and we're going to throw this Rapala. It's a real light bait. You throw it on a spinning tackle. I like to throw it on 8 to 10 pound test. Is about all you can get away with. It's about as large a line as you can use on it. And you're just throwing it out there and twitching it along the edge. I like to throw it in real clear water like this because it doesn't make a lot of noise and the fish have to see this bait. And you just throw it out there and you're just twitching it along. Let it set for a little bit and give it a little twitch, maybe a little pop, and let it set. This is a super bait for throwing over spawning fish in real shallow water because the fish aren't spooky. A big loud bait, a lot of times in shallow water, will spook them. And I just like to throw it right out there at the edge of the grass. Let it set there for a little bit. A lot of your strikes will occur just as it's sitting there. You never move it. And then just give it a little twitch and let it set. This is a real slow bait to fish. So you're throwing it over them beds a lot of times, and those fish just can't stand that thing sitting above them. They'll finally just come and hit it. It's a real good bait for real spooky fish that get a lot of pressure. People throwing spinner baits and crankbaits by them, they won't touch them. But you sit and throw something real quiet and it sits there a long time, they'll finally come and get it. I just like to twitch that bait along real slow and just keep that bait twitching along, and hopefully one of them old big fish will come up and get it. Right on the edge of that grass. Just let it sit there. Twitch it along. Say, there's nothing more exciting than fish hitting topwater bait. It's the most fun fishing part of the game I think there is topwater fishing. Okay. I've showed you how to fish that Rapala, and now I want to show you a bait that I like to use when you get a little more chop on the water, kind of like we have right now, and the fish maybe want just a little louder bait. One of my favorites is a bangler. It's got a little prop on the back of it. Yet I fish it just about the same way, just twitching it along, but it makes a little more noise. But again, you're fishing it real slow, just twitching it, but it gives a little more rip sensation to the water. And sometimes that'll stimulate these fish into hitting a little better. If you're fishing maybe a little cloudier water than with that Rapala, that bangler will create a real good strike sometimes. So let it sit there, give it a twitch too. When they hit this bait, you usually don't lose a fish. You don't want to really overhorse a fish on topwater, but because they get all them treble hooks in their mouth, it's hard to get it out unless you really overpower the fish. You won't lose a fish a lot of times on topwater. Twitch it and let it sit there. A little prop basically go a little more. It creates a little more activity on the surface, but yet it's still quiet and small, and it doesn't make a lot of noise. But those fish will really hit it when they're on the beds. Sometimes the fish will explode on it, and sometimes it's just there and it's gone. You don't hear a noise or see anything happen, but the bait's gone. They just come up and inhale it from underneath. And again, a real smooth cast. Let it enter the water real quiet and let it sit there. Those fish here, they'll come look and see what it was that hit the water. So a lot of your strikes occur when the bait's just sitting there and you've never moved it. I like to throw it on about a 5.5 foot rod, 12 to 14 pound test line. A light action rod. Give it a twitch and let it sit there. That ought to be a good place to catch one right off that point. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But you hit enough places like that and I'll guarantee you one of them will get it. Oh, hope that snake don't get it. Okay. I want to show you a bait now that really works well on schooling fish for summer and fall fishing when the fish get their schooling on top. And one of my favorites is the Topwater. Again, I use the snap on it. I use 12 to 14 pound test line on a light action rod. It really works well for fish chasing bait when you see fish schooling. I throw it, make a good long cast just at the edge where those fish are schooling. And you pop it real fast, just like bait trying to get away from them. A fish gets after it. When you see a fish strike at it and miss it, just keep working it. Don't stop it, just like a minnow would be trying to get away from it. And a lot of times these fish will come back and maybe hit it 3 or 4 times before they finally get it. And when you finally feel him pull on it, that's when you set the hook. but just keep a steady popping action coming at it. You can work it real fast, you know, if they want it real fast. Some guys just like to really pop it and just keep it. It just acts like a minnow trying to jump away on top, or a little minnow feeding on the surface. That'll create the bigger fish to come and get him too. That little bait makes a real loud popping action in that water. My favorite colors are the white, the chrome with black back are real good colors for a popar. Sometimes it dives under the water. It don't really matter. Just keep it up and let it come back to the top and just keep it chugging it along. If it does go down and dive on you, you can take a file and file the bottom lip just a little bit. It doesn't take much, just 3 or 4 strokes on the bottom lip, and that'll let that thing, it won't dive as much. It'll stay up on top. If it gets to diving too bad on you, you can just hit it 3 or 4 times with a file, what I use to keep my hooks good and sharp, and it'll keep it from diving as much, and you can keep it on top and really work it real well then. Another bait that works just as good as the popar is the tiny torpedo that I like to throw. And it's a real small bait again. It's got a little prop on the back of it. And you work it the same way. You just twitch it along, and the fish will, a lot of times will hit them when they're chasing them little fry, we call them glass minnows and stuff that you can't hardly see, but the littler baits work real well when they're hitting that small stuff. And it works just as good as the popar. Sometimes they want the prop bait, and sometimes they want the popar. So those are 2 real good baits that work real well on schooling fish when they're hitting a little bitty fry. I've got us here in some different kind of structure to fish instead of the grass. We got some lay down trees running out here in the water. On these, I think a loud bait like a popar or devil's horse, these fish will be laying up under these trees, and to get these fish to come out from under these trees, I think a louder type bait will work to get these fish to come out and hit it. Even though we got a lot of boat traffic running up and down the river here, these fish get used to it. So really, topwater baits will still work. Even though you got places where you get a lot of boat traffic, topwater will still work because the fish get adjusted to the noise all the time. So we're going to try to see if we can pull a fish out from under one of these trees, come out and get a bait. I like to just set and throw that bait right down along the edge of them. Say these fish will be laying up under these trees now and the sun's out. And just try to work that bait right along the edge of it. See the little fry jump out of the water when I jerk it? Those fish will lay up under it. When it gets time and you get them aggravated enough, they'll come out and hit that bait. A lot of fry laying up around these trees right now. Every time I jerk that bait, you see that fry jump out of the water. There he is. Oh, I got him both hooks. Come here. Ouch. Boy, he ate that thing. My pliers here. Pretty fish. Let him go right here. Okay. They hit that little pawpaw, popping it down them treetops. I shoot them all with my Magnum BB gun. Oh, there's one. Oh yeah. He come right out from under that tree and got that pawpaw. Come here, baby. Oh, don't jump. Don't jump. Oh, yeah. He come right out from under that tree and got that pawpaw. Oh, I might get pliers. Nice. Let's recap some of the things that I've showed you today. First of all, on your light line, on your spinning rods, your light tackle, your Rapalas, your little twitch baits, put new line on, set your drag to where it can take it. You're going to be using these baits mainly in open water, so you can go with the lighter line. Throw your little Rapalas, your little tiny torpedoes, these type bait on that, on your spinning tackle. On your medium tackle, I like you use the 12 to 14 pound test, put new line on. I put new line on every time I go to the lake. That way you're always assured that the line is at full strength. The old line will break easy. Your twitch baits, I throw on the 12 to 14 pound test. Your minnow baits early in the spring, spawning time. Then I go to the Zara spooks after spawn through fall. On towards fall, I go with the prop baits. Your devil's horses, your wood choppers, baits like this I use. Then also, when I go to my heavy lines, my 20, 25 pound test, I throw them on my buzz baits, on my Johnson spoons in the heavy cover. You got to have something that can hold these fish when you get a hold of them out there in that heavy cover. Hopefully, some of these hints that I've given you will make you a better and more successful topwater fisherman.
Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World Library, presented by today's foremost professional sportsmen, who will share proven methods and techniques that will help you become a better and more successful fisherman.
We hope you've enjoyed this presentation and would like to take this opportunity to invite you to visit the Bass Pro Shops National Headquarters in Springfield, Missouri. Outdoor World, with over 150,000 square feet of shopping magic. A showcase for everything found in the Bass Pro catalogs and much more. Waterfalls, restaurants, 5 fresh and saltwater aquariums, endless displays of top-quality hunting gear, and the largest fishing department in the world. Visit the Outdoor World showroom today, and for our latest catalog, call 1-800-BASS-PRO. The catalog's free, and so is the call. Thank you for letting us help you have fun outdoors.